Yeah. What were some of the consulting skills you found yourself using the most in that first gig at that education startup?
There are so many. I remember when I got in there because they were a startup that was growing quickly but trying to reach profitability, there was not much structure going on. So the very first thing is there was just so much going on. They were hiring, and the first question I came up there was I spent 2 weeks, and this is the first thing you learn when you're a consultant is before you go in there with a hammer trying to build something, you try to understand the current architecture. So I took the first few weeks to actually follow people. I followed the content team. I followed the writing team. I followed the marketing team. I followed the operations team, and just to learn what their day to day is like. Because no one likes it when you go in there without context and just start hammering things away. And that really helped me build trust. And then the second was like using that empathy to be able to figure out why are people here? Why did they choose to work at JumpCut when they could have worked at any other company? And where are they currently and where do they want to go? So it's not just understanding what the work they're doing, but where do you ultimately want to go? For example, from there, I learned that certain people, this was their first job. Some people actually dropped out of college to join this startup, and other people, they wanted to eventually build a certain skill set. This really helped me build trust, which is the second thing you learn in consulting is that it's not about how perfect your recommendation is, but if no one implements it and no one trusts you, then it's no better than a binder that just sits on the wall. And so for me, building that trust was the second item. So now that I understand what people do, I've built that trust. The third is now I can start figuring out, well, let's make life better. And this is where I came in and thought, let's do an audit of everything that we're working on, every single project. What are people working on? And because the company was growing so quickly, no one was keeping track of who's doing what. And they couldn't realize when we put it all on paper, we realized there was two things. One, some people were duplicating work. For example, there was one team that was researching the next course and another team that was already building that course. So it's kind of like, wait, we should bring this together. And then second is that there was a lot of work that didn't need to be done that were essentially one-off comments. So let's say one of the founders made that wasn't meant to be blown to a project, but someone listened to it like, oh, he wants this, Dio wants this, we must work on it. And so just taking that inventory. And I remember my goal there was, guys, I'm not trying to add to your workload, quite the opposite. I'm trying to reduce the workload and figure out what needs to get done. And because of that, within 6 months, we were able to go from a 7-figure business to an 8-figure business. We were profitable and everything. By not doing more, we're doing less. And that was like the third skill set in consulting, which is picking what you choose to work on. Because a lot of times in consulting, and this is part of the interview process, is that they give you a lot of information, a lot of data, but it's not for you to go and chase everything. It's about focusing. It's as much about knowing what to focus on as much as what not to focus
Yeah.
on. And that was one of the core skill sets that consulting taught me.
Well, how did you do that? Like, what did that look like? Was it interviews with people in the company? Was it data gathering? Did you put stuff together in Excel? Like, really detailed? Like, what does it actually look like to do what you're describing?
So first I gotta get the buy-in, right? So my goal was I started with the end in mind. So the end in mind was let's figure out what needs to get worked on, let's put more people there, and let's figure out what doesn't need to work on and question why are we working on it. And again, the answer could have been that I was completely wrong and I was out of place, but I wanted to make sure that people knew I'm coming from a good place. So that's the first, is earning trust. But after that, I literally got a whiteboard, and it wasn't anything fancy. I got a whiteboard and post-it notes, and I went around to each of the teams. At this point, I built trust with the team members, the engineers, and I said, "Hey, I'm just curious what everyone is working on. Do you know what the content team is working on, engineering team?" And they're like, "No." And then I would ask the editing team, "Hey, course editing team, do you know what the customer service team initiatives are?" They're like, "No." And so we gathered around this whiteboard, and it's funny that they didn't even have all hands meetings because it was just so people were just running all the time. And I said, all right, this is what we're gonna do. I have a couple of post-it notes. I want everyone to write down what you're working on and how many hours per day it takes you to work on it. And also, second, what do you think the impact to the business is? And then you can rank it here. And immediately when the board was done, I brought it up to the leadership team, and they were like, why are we working on half of this stuff? And then we got the team together and we started, all right, guys, let's take a step back and figure out what we need to do. And so we started prioritizing the board. And so during that phase, it's like, this is the learning phase. In consulting, you learn how to learn. And so I have never read so many books on manufacturing until up to that point. So I was reading books about Toyota,
Nice.
the manufacturer, trying to figure out, great, so how do we streamline this? I had no clue what a Kanban board was until then. And then eventually just built one. for the team, which was that turned that whiteboard, and just built this process where it's just easy to keep track of projects, easy to know what we needed to work on and where resources were going. And immediately that saved us money in terms of cost. It brought the team to be a little bit more focused, happier. No one's pulling late nighters, which you should not be doing at this point. And then we were just focused on doing the things that would move the company forward. And eventually, of course, like I mentioned, we reached the 8 figures and we were profitable. But I say we because, yes, I started that process, but I wasn't the one who did it all myself. It's like a really great team effort. And that's pretty much the one of the projects the first project I worked on when I was at Jump Cut, and it was also self-driven.
I think that's one of the best things of consulting is it exposes you to so many different ways of thinking about problems, all sorts of different problems, frameworks, and also just the sense that everything is like figure outable, right?
Exactly.
So you either just need to ask someone or find a book or a framework or a tool. A lot of people don't think like that when they're approaching business problems. It's just like, well, here's the way it's been done here, and my boss likes it this way. And they literally do a suboptimal thing for years.
Exactly. It's like it's like the growth mentality, but also the whole idea of letting go of the ego. And I think that was part of it, is that going into any problem solving and really wondering, starting with the question of why are we working on this? And if the answer is that it's been done this way, we have a rule at my consulting offer too. It's like, is that anyone who comes to the team, and I told us this during their orientation, is that the answer should never be, oh, because this is what Davis did. I was like, well, if I'm passing it on to you, I'm expecting you to take it levels above what I used to do. So that should never be the answer, that someone else used to do it that way. But you're right. It's like, that's like the difference. And at a consulting firm, it's like you're brought in. These are all these sharp people who were wanting to learn, wanting to grow. They don't want to just type the same things, turn the keyboard, if you will, or turn the wheel. They want to be able to evolve it. And I think that's one of the things that enables the whole ecosystem to exist, is that you find these people who are motivated to want to improve themselves and want to, yes, they want to build a great career, but during their time in consulting, they want to give value to their clients, to the team, and so forth.